Hi everybody, welcome to my kitchen. This is the tutorial for using the splinting material to make some simple piece of adaptive equipment. So I have everything set up here for me already, and there is a written instruction sheet on Moodle that has the list of the materials and things that you want to have ready ahead of time. If you want to come a little closer, and I can show you, I have my towels here. I have my splinting material, I have my plastic spatula, sharp scissors, some paper. I'm working on making a simple handle for a toothbrush, so that I have that here. And then I have a couple different ways to mark on the splinting material. So I have two setups here. I actually have an electric skillet at home. If you have an electric skillet in your home, this is your best setup to use for this type of activity. But if you don't have an electric skillet, you could also just use a regular stovetop skillet, which I've used in the past before when I didn't have an electric skillet in my possession. So for the electric skillet and for the stovetop skillet, you want to make sure that you fill it up with about 2 inches of water. And if you want to come a little closer and show them, you can see I have some splinting material in there right now. And the important thing is that the water fully covers all aspects of the material when it's in there. It's being heated up. So for the electric skillet, I have mine it's pretty close to 250 degrees. And you know, electric skillets sort of go on and off and on and off. So that keeps a very sort of steady heat pattern. And you can see the little bubbles in there that show you that the water is heated and sort of the steam coming up. You don't want it boiling. You definitely don't want it boiling. You just want to sort of see those little bubbles sitting there. That's your best temperature that you're looking for. And then same thing over here with the stovetop skillet. You can see the bubbles. So what I did for the stovetop, I have a gas stovetop here, and I turned it all the way up to high, and then I brought it up to just ready to boil. It just started making some bubbles, and then I turned it down until you can see these bubbles are just sort of hanging out in there. So it's not really boiling, but it is, pretty hot. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you, if you have a blue piece of splinting material like this is called the easy form. If you have a blue piece of splinting material that has the holes in it, it's the same material, it's just perforated for reasons for making a splint. And if you have the tan material, with or without holes, it's also the same as this blue material easy form. It's just a different color. If you received this black material, a few of you did because I ran out of the other stuff, it's very similar to the easy form. It's actually easier to mold when it gets really hot. So I'm just going to show you what each one looks like when it's hot. And I would strongly encourage you, if you think you have enough, that you're going to have enough sort of extra splinting material to cut off a piece and warm it up in your water and sort of play with the material and get a feel for it before you start making your adaptive equipment. So I'll start here with the blue material, or if you have the tan material, it's very similar. Use your plastic spatula to pull the material out of the water. This has been sitting in here for a few minutes, at least, I would say 2 to 3 minutes. You want to give it that amount of time to really heat it all up. It doesn't really drape or anything, but you can see that it's really soft and moldable. And you want to take it out and just sort of pat it dry. And then you can really start sort of working with it. And when you're using your sample piece, just play around with it and see how it bends and folds and molds. You can even stretch it a little bit. You can practice sort of, what happens when you stick it together. You can pull it back apart before it hardens, just to give yourself some practice. And this material is really nice because you can do a lot of sort of weird like molding and stretching things to it, but then you can put it back in the water and it'll sort of go back to the same shape it was. And we'll go back to that in a couple minutes and you'll see how it's gone back to the same shape. And just like flatten it out there a little bit. Okay, so for the black material, very similar. It's just when it heats up, it's it gets it gets softer, so you can see it really draping there. So when you take the black material out, you can tell it's warm enough when it drapes out like that. Same thing, I would tell you to sort of, play around with it. You can see this is easier to stretch, easier to roll and mold, and it takes longer to dry and to harden again. But same as the blue material, if I put it back in there, and you can come back to the blue material here and you see it sort of just goes right back to the shape that it was. So both of these are really nice materials to use when you are making adaptive equipment, because if you sort of mess up or you make a mistake or you want to make it a little bit better, you can put it back into the water and it'll go back to its shape. Okay, so what I'm going to show you today is a very quick and easy, very simple modification to do. I have my toothpaste here, and I'm just going to make a handle, an adapting handle for the toothpaste. So I'm going to use my paper, and that's what I'm going to use to make my design. I'm going to make it out of paper first and make sure it fits and works for my purpose and what I want for the toothbrush, and then I will draw it on the splinting material and cut it all out and make it. So the handle is one of those handles that I want to go, from one end to the other, so I can just sort of slide my hand in and then be able to brush my teeth. So I'm going to take the toothbrush here, and I'm going to sort of mark on the paper where I want each end of the handle to go. And if you can sort of see there that I made those marks there, right? Not all the way to the end. I want the handle to stop here and probably to start here. So these are the holes that I'm going to put into the splinting material. But because my material is going to be in an arc for the handle, I know it's going to need to be longer than these marks here. So I'm going to mark it down here and then all the way up to about here. It's always better to go longer than you think you need, because you can cut it shorter versus going too short, and there's not much you can do at that point. And I'm going to make it wide and wider than I think I need, and just sort of sketch out a piece that I will need here. Okay, and then I'm going to move these over because I want the holes to be in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to cut this paper out. Again, this is my sort of rough draft, or my first try of what I want to make for the handle, and I'm doing it out of paper because this is, if I mess it up, I can just try again with paper, and I'm not wasting the splinting material that I have. Okay, so I'm going to make my holes here. This is the way you would make a hole into the splinting material as well, right? So you would sort of use that pointier end of your scissors and just make a little hole there. And I'm just going to cut it a little bit wider so the toothbrush handle can go in there. And I'm just going to check my measurements is really what I'm trying to do here. Okay. Okay, so I want this piece here, and it's okay if the paper rips a little bit. This is really what the splinting material is going to do. It's going to widen as I put it on the toothbrush. And I'm just going to slide it up to the top there, and then just check on my end here and see what I think. Do I think it's long enough? Do I think it's wide enough? Let me get it all the way up to the top where I wanted it to be. So what I'm figuring out here at this point is it really isn't long enough, right? And where those holes are ending up too short. So I actually do need these holes to be wider apart. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. That's the whole reason why you do that. So I'm going to put this piece on here. I'm going to say, you know what, I think I want these holes to be farther apart. And then I want this handle to be longer. Okay, so I'm going to go back in here. Make a pretend handle out of the paper again. Cut that out. I'm going to make the hole where I marked it. Okay, and then same thing here. And by the way, I made this piece, cut it out wider than you probably think I might need, because I'm going to want to roll it. Because I don't want really sharp edges. So the handle is actually going to end up like this. That's why I made it wider. Okay, so we're going to try this again. I'm going to get an idea of if this prototype is going to work. I'll put this bottom one in. Oh, I'm actually doing there. It should probably be this way, I think, but I'll try it and see what I think. Okay, so the handle is looking better, right? It's looking bigger, and it's looking like I probably have more room in order to fit my hand in there. Okay, so I'm liking this better. The holes are sort of where I want them to be, and I do like the width of this handle, again, because I want to roll it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try that prototype with my splinting material, because I'm pretty happy with it. So if you have the blue or the tan material, you can use pen to mark your design on your material. If you have the black material, obviously the pen won't work, but you can use a contrasting color crayon or marker. It has to be a permanent marker. So this probably will be hard to see on the video, but if I mark on this black material here with a red crayon, you can see the lines there, and when I put it in the water, it won't wash off. Or if you use a permanent marker, like a Sharpie in yellow or gold or silver, it won't come off. And just so you know, it's totally fine to have pen marks or crayon marks or Sharpie marks on your prototype that you're making at home. We do in the clinic have special pencils that we use that make it easier to not have those marks when you're done, but I totally understand that you're using what you have at home, so it's fine to have those marks. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be very mindful of trying to save the material that I have and not have to cut too much. So I'm going to line this up on the corner, so I only have to draw one line here and one line here, and that's where I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to go right in here and mark the holes where I want them to be on the splinting material. Okay, so you can see sort of the model that I made here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my practice piece here out so they don't stick together, because splinting material will stick together if you have them in there at the same time. Now I'm putting this in here to warm it up so I can cut out my designs. You don't want to try to cut this material when it's hardened. It's very difficult to cut, and it's really not good for your hands, so you want to make sure it's nice and warm. So I'm going to let that sit in there for a couple of minutes. And just a couple of things about when you are using the splinting material and cutting the splinting material. Again, make sure you have the sharpest scissors that you can find and sort of the largest scissors, because it is thick material, and the bigger and the sharper the scissors are, the easier it is to cut. Make sure the splinting material is pretty warm before you start cutting it, but make sure that you do let it cool for at least 30 seconds before you pick it up and start cutting it, because I don't want you to burn yourself, obviously. And also, just a reminder, make sure you're using a plastic spatula, because a metal spatula will stick to the splinting material. When the material is in the pan, I don't know what kind of pans you guys have at home, so I really would like for you to use the spatula to occasionally sort of move the splinting material around and make sure it's not sticking to the bottom of the pan. Doesn't typically stick to Teflon pans like this electric skillet, and this skillet here is Teflon, but I don't know what you guys have at home, so this is a way to make sure that it's not sticking. And then every once in a while you can sort of pick the material up, and you can see this is draping really nicely. So it's definitely warm enough for me to start cutting it. So I'm going to just lay it out on my towel here. And I'm just going to dab it and dry it with the other towel. And give it a couple seconds to cool off. Okay, so you can see, again, very sort of droopy. Looks like it's going to be really easy to cut. So I like to take my material and sort of lay it on the towel as I'm working. And then I'm going to line my scissors right up all the way and kind of get them as wide as I can. You want to make the longest cuts that you can with your scissors. If you get in and do like little tiny snips, it doesn't work very well. You get sharp edges on your splinting material. So nice long cuts. And you want to sort of get it right into that wedge to get the best cut. So there's one piece. I'm going to come along here. Now, if you are, spending longer time cutting than I am, because this was very quick, very simple, just a couple of cuts here. So this will stay warm for the entire time that I need. But if your splinting material starts to get too hard, right, and it starts to harden because it's cooling down and it's really difficult for you to cut, you can go ahead and just throw it right back in the water and let it soften up again. Okay, so I'm just, again, using that pointy side. It's still warm, and I'm just making that hole here. I'm just going to do a couple of snips now that I have the hole. I'm going to try to anyway, just so I can get it to widen when I'm using it with, let's see, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I'm just going to push it along the scissors there to widen it up a little bit. Then I can get my scissors in there. There we go. And I don't want to do too much. I just want to get it wide enough, so I'm going to throw it back in to mold it around the handle of the toothbrush. And I want it just big enough to go around the handle because I don't want it sliding around on the handle, right? So this is getting too hard for me to do this second hole. So I am going to put it right in here. And this is a good example, if you can get a little closer and see. If there's one part of your splinting material that you want to heat up and you don't want to disturb another part because it's already done in the way you want it, you can put, edges and, just part of the splinting material in to heat it up. And this part will stay hardened and that part will soften. So that's a way for you to do a little bit more sort of detailed work. Okay, so I'm going to cut in this hole here. Okay, and push it all the way through like I did the other one on both sides. Again, just to make that hole. I can even come in here when you have a hole like that, and now that it's nice and warm, I can get my fingers in there and stretch it a little bit. Okay, so one last time now, I'm going to put the whole thing in there, warm it all up, so then I can do my mold. Okay, now I made those holes wide enough so the splinting material won't close up while I'm warming it up again. They'll close up a little bit if you can see it shrinking, but when I take it out and it's nice and soft, I can stretch those holes right back out again. Not a big deal. Okay, and remember to try to move your splinting material around when it's in there, but keep it submerged so it can get nice and warm, and then it can, maybe just a little bit more. So then it's easier to mold. The warmer it is, the easier it is to mold. So a good couple minutes is good. This one probably won't take as long because it was already warm when I put it in. But if you're putting in cold splinting material, it takes a good 2 minutes or more for it to really warm up. And that as long as you have your water warm enough. Okay, so I will dry this off with my towel. Okay. And then I'm going to go right in with my toothbrush here. Nice soft splinting material. See how that hole sort of stretches. And then, because this is smaller up here, I can kind of squish it back in there. Okay, and I can sort of stretch, and I'm molding. Let's see, there we go. And I might even just come in here, because this is smaller and I'm just realizing that I want it to fit on there really well, I'm just coming in here and squishing it together. Okay, and it will stick together when it's warm. And there's that piece there. I'm going to put my hand right in there so I can get that shape of my hand, and it's going to fit really nice on there. And then I'm going to sort of start rolling it up here. Rolling it like this gives it a little bit more stability, right? Makes it stronger. It also pulls any of those sort of, you know, sharper edges or corners or anything away from my hand. Okay, and there is my very simple adapted handle for a toothbrush to show you how to use the splinting material. At this point, it's pretty good the way I would like it. It's molded right to my hand. This would be me using my own customized handle. I would leave it right on here for my toothbrush because I'm the only one using it. The only last thing that I wanted to show you, one thing that you can do if seems like you're waiting a long time for your splinting material to harden, you can run it under cold water. Okay, so running it under cold water will decrease the temperature very quickly, and then there we go. It's right back to its original state. Okay, there you go, guys. That's my very simple tutorial on how to use splinting material to make some very simple adaptive equipment for your toothbrush. I hope you have fun with this. And while you're doing it, obviously, if you have any questions or anything you need from me, just reach out and I'm happy to help. Take care, guys.